Hello good people, this is FisherTwelve and we have another exciting bro talk for you guys today, as always, and today's bro talk features a story about the police raiding my friend's party last summer. I end up having to come up clutch and save my friends, no one goes to jail, and my parents have no idea any of this happened. But a little background info before I get into the story. The main characters in this story are Owen, my friend from college. I might have talked about him before, his friend from back home, Brian, and our other college friend, Andy. And this takes place at Brian's house, which is about a 2 or so hour drive from my house, maybe less with no traffic. Brian also has a barn in his backyard, and when I say barn, I do mean like an old style, 2-story red barn. And Brian doesn't live on like a farm or any sort of like massive tract of land. It's just your typical suburban house with like a barn in the backyard. And the barn is like a usual hangout spot. Many parties have been had here before. So the story starts early morning, not sure what day. It's summer, so school's out. I'm at my parents' house for this particular week, and I get a text around 10 a.m. or so from Brian saying he's throwing down at the barn, come over tonight. And this is pretty cool. I haven't even been up for a minute yet, and already I got plans for a rager tonight. Yes, a rager. And I text Owen. He says he's going to go as well, but lets me know that this party is actually a graduation party for the town high school. So about 45% of the kids there were graduated high school seniors, going to be freshmen in the fall. 35% of the kids there were going to be sophomores like Brian, and then 20% of kids, including Owen, Andy, and I, were going to be juniors. And I think that's how you get 100%. So even though this party was going to have a younger crowd, I was still down to go and figured it was better than all the other non-existent plans I had for that night. So I had told Owen, I was like, no, I don't really care that it's a graduation party. I'm still down to go if you are. Unfortunately, I also had work that day, and this is when I was still working at American Eagle. So I went to work, I did my time, I got out, and what was good is that where I was working was already 30 minutes in the direction of Brian's place. So this was going to cut down my ride time a little bit. But my shift ended during rush hour. It ended during rush hour as it typically did during my tenure at American Eagle. I always seemed to get out during rush hour and was driving during rush hour traffic. But needless to say, it took me 2 hours and 40 minutes to get to Brian's place. And I can't remember if I had taken the Trailblazer or the Grand Marquis. I think it was the Grand Marquis because that had more seats, and that's actually going to be important later on in the story. But like I said, it had taken me a while to get there. I still arrived before the party had started. Owen wasn't there yet, but a handful of people were. Other friends that I had met, at previous times visiting Owen and Brian down at their place. But the night goes on, more and more people start to arrive, music starts bumping, people are dancing. Nothing too exciting is happening right now at the party, it's pretty standard. People are talking, people are drinking, people are talking and drinking, people are talking and drinking and playing beer pong. A very average party. But the night goes on, and more people start to show up, including Owen, Andy, and Andy's girlfriend. And we go up to the second floor of the barn just to hang out, talk, catch up, the typical thing adults do at these kid parties, But eventually we notice Brian is gone, so we go downstairs to look for him, and the barn is packed, like wall-to-wall people. We have to swim through people to get to Brian. The music is bumping, people are hooking up. Now this is a very, typical college classic party scene. So we finally make our way over to Brian. We're hanging out for a little bit. I want to say it's around 2 a.m., and then we hear those heart-stopping words that no one ever hopes to hear. The cops are outside! And upon hearing this, everyone makes a run for the door and tries to run away. I didn't. I just kind of stood with my friends in the barn. Some people did end up escaping the police, but for the most part, anyone who tried to leave was stopped. I knew I wasn't going to be able to run away because I had driven my car there, and I couldn't just, leave it there and take off. And plus, my plan was to sleep at Brian's that night, so even if I tried to flee, I wouldn't have anywhere to go. I would have eventually ended up back at Brian's place. So police end up surrounding the barn. They've blocked off the driveway, and 3 or 4 officers come into the barn, and they're not They're not quite assholes, but they're definitely not happy to be there, I'll say that. So they start asking stupid questions like, what's going on here? Is this a party? Is everyone over 21? And no one is answering him, and also at this point, Brian has already outed himself as the house owner, and he's talking to another officer outside. And I'm kind of freaking out a bit. Usually when cops bust parties, they just let everyone leave, but the house owner. But as you guys had heard, they weren't letting anyone leave. And this is probably the only time I felt like I might actually get in trouble with a police officer. So the officers inside the barn tell us to place all the alcohol in the middle of the room, and we do, but the officer doesn't believe that we gave him all of it. He thinks that there's still some alcohol left, and he goes, something along the lines of, really? This is all the alcohol at this party? And then I remember some idiot shouting, yeah, we're killing it here. And the officer responds, oh yeah, killer? And cuffs him right there. And he ends up getting let go, spoiler alert. But it was just hilarious to see someone like talk back to a police officer and then get the cuffs. Also at this point in time, some parent comes storming in and starts shouting for their son. Mark, where the hell are you? Get your ass out here. And this Mark kid steps forward and everyone is laughing. I kind of felt bad, but I have never seen a parent embarrass their kid like that before. It was hilarious. The cop might have even been laughing. But the cop lets them leave and tells us, the rest of us, that we have to call our parents and tell them to come get us. Now, if you remember the beginning of the story, I had mentioned that it was a 2-hour drive to Brian's. So if I called my parents to come get me, they wouldn't be here till 4 a.m. And I wasn't about to call my parents and tell them I'm at a high school graduation party that got busted. And maybe if I had explained that to the officer and told them that and I planned to sleep at Brian's house that night, they might have been okay with that and I would have been all set. But the cop seemed so rude and dismissive at the time that I figured if I wanted to leave without any sort of consequence, I was only going to have one opportunity to do it. And if I made a half-ass attempt to leave, he probably would have just thought I was wicked drunk. If I went up to him and I was like, oh yeah, officer, I plan to sleep here tonight, he might have just, dismissed that, thought I was being a drunk idiot and, embarrassed me. I mean, no bad consequence would have came out of it, but it just wasn't something I wanted to get into. But I end up going up to the officer and I tell the officer, officer, I haven't had anything to drink tonight. Is it okay if I drive home? And he looks at me for a bit and then tells me to follow him. He walks me down the driveway to the street and gives me a field sobriety test. This was my first time taking a sobriety test, so it was kind of nerve-wracking. I felt like I was more likely to mess up from being worried about messing up than from alcohol impairing my ability to walk in a straight line. But he had me start off by saying my ABCs. I said them really fast, so then he had me redo them. Then I had to count from something weird like 79 to 67. I did that fine. Then I had to walk in a straight line, the classic straight line walking. Told me to take 9 steps forward and then turn around and take 9 back. And while I'm doing this, he's asking me questions like, where do I go to school? What am I majoring in? And then he asks very sarcastically if I thought I was smart. And I didn't appreciate this. I didn't appreciate the context in which he was saying that, and I didn't appreciate his tone. So I responded back with equal sarcasm and said, well, I didn't drink, and now I'm about to drive home. So yeah, I do think I'm smart. And he doesn't say anything to this. He just tells me that I'm free to go, and I ask him if I can take friends with me, and he says yes. Now, the reason I asked about my friends is because they're in the same boat as me. Andy and his girlfriend live more than 2 hours away. If their parents came, it would be a much worse situation than my parents coming. And Owen's parents aren't the biggest fans of Brian, so having to explain at 2 a.m. why he needs to get picked up wouldn't have gone over well. So I go back to the barn, I call out for Owen, Andy, and his girlfriend, and we also end up taking another one of Owen's friends, Nate. We get into my car, and the second I get my seatbelt on, I hear cops yelling at me. And one comes up to my window and orders Andy and I to get out of the car. And he starts yelling at us like, what do you think you're doing? Driving behind the wheel while drunk? That's illegal. And I told him straight up, officer, I already took a sobriety test. I passed. You can ask that officer right over there. I'm going home. And then he just says, okay. So we get back into the car and we leave. Now, our plan is to come back to Brian's. We're all sleeping there. Owen, Andy still have their cars there. So we end up going to McDonald's a few towns over, and by the time we get back, everyone is gone from Brian's, even the police. They totally let Brian off the hook. He didn't even get in trouble or anything, which was good. Everything was, fine and dandy. All he had to do was just, I think, call his parents and tell them that he had a party that got busted, and his parents were already okay with him having a party in the first place, so they didn't care about this phone call, which was awesome. So now I have a question for you guys about something I left sort of anonymous in this story. What level of intoxication do you think I was at to pass the sobriety test? The answer is that I was completely sober. Well, maybe not entirely sober. I think I had one shot and I smoked a J maybe 2 hours before the cops showed up. And the reason for this is because when Owen arrived, I noticed how many people were also starting to arrive, and I realized how the party was going to end, especially with the fact that it was on the night of these kids' graduation. Even though my decision ended up helping a lot of my friends, I really made the choice not to drink or do anything or to stay sober for my best interest. And I think that can sometimes get forgotten when you're out partying or having fun, which in turn leads to a lot of mistakes. So the reason why I'm telling this story is as a reminder to always be looking out for yourself. I know there's probably a different story or a different commentary I could have told to get the point across better, but I thought this was an interesting story. But like I said, guys, always be looking out for yourself, because in some cases, if you're not looking out for yourself, no one else is. But that's going to be the story I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed the Bro Talk, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter at FisherTwelve, same as the channel name. There'll be a link down in the description. And make sure to check out DJ Ansky, the music provider to the FisherTwelve channel. His links will be in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and take care.